What if I told you there's a secret men guard more closely than their bank password, something no man will ever confess over a romantic dinner, and that once you discover it, you'll finally understand why some women seem to carry that inexplicable magnetism that makes men pursue them, protect them, and never want to let them go? Stay until the end of this video, because I'm going to reveal exactly that. And I promise you, what you hear today will change the way you relate to men forever. I'm Liz Rose, and for over 2 decades, I've studied relationships, attraction, feminine energy, and the emotional patterns that make love last or fall apart. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. I have spent more than 20 years sitting with couples in crisis, with men who cried without knowing why, and with women who asked themselves what they did wrong. I've learned things that no self-help book will ever tell you with this kind of clarity. But before we get there, I want to give you something right now, a micro win, as I like to call it, something you can use today, within the next few hours. Here it is. Men don't desire what you think they desire. It's not a perfect body. It's not food on the table. It's not the woman who never complains. What a man truly desires is to feel needed without feeling controlled. That's it. Hold on to that. Write it down if you have to, because that principle, as simple as it sounds, carries implications so profound that we're going to spend this entire video unpacking them. And if while you're listening, you think of someone who needs to hear this, a friend, a sister, a coworker who's been asking herself what's going wrong in her relationship, please share this video. This isn't information to keep to yourself. This is for all of us to walk forward with more clarity, more power, and far less unnecessary suffering. Let's begin. I want to tell you something I learned many years ago, when I was still a woman who believed love was a matter of effort, that if you gave enough, if you were good enough, pretty enough, patient enough, he would stay. I believed love was an equation where if you added the right ingredients, the result was guaranteed. I've since watched brilliant, intelligent, extraordinary women arrive at their lowest points carrying that exact same broken belief. So I began to study not just relationships, but neuroscience, attachment psychology, biology, and emotional behavior. And I started to understand something that made me uncomfortable at first. The truth, when it finally arrives, disturbs before it liberates. What I understood was this: men and women are wired differently, not better or worse, differently. And when we don't understand that difference, we hurt each other, often without meaning to, often without understanding why. Here's something I want to say clearly. Most relationship conflicts don't come from a lack of love. They come from a lack of understanding, from not knowing how the other person's brain actually works. And when a woman learns to understand the male mind, not to manipulate it, I want to be very clear about that, but to relate with more intelligence and less suffering, something extraordinary happens. The bond deepens. Desire returns. Connection becomes real and sustained. So what do men really want? Let's start at the beginning, because that's always where understanding takes root. The male brain is wired, at its deepest level, for action, for solving, for protecting, for providing. That's not ideology. It's how men have been shaped over thousands of years. The man who couldn't hunt, couldn't protect, couldn't resolve, he didn't survive. And that programming didn't disappear just because we now live in apartments with streaming services and food delivery apps. It's still there. In the deepest layers of the emotional brain, in the part that doesn't reason, it only feels and reacts. What does this mean in practice? It means a man who feels he can't fix anything, whose every decision gets questioned, whose every action gets corrected. Stops feeling like himself. And a man who doesn't feel like himself inside his relationship first goes quiet, then goes distant, and eventually disappears. Sometimes physically, sometimes emotionally. And the emotional disappearance is often worse. Now, and here's what most people won't tell you. A man needing to feel capable does not mean you have to make yourself small. It doesn't mean pretending you don't know things. It doesn't mean dimming your intelligence or your ambition. Not at all. What it means is that there's a way of relating to a man that activates in him the instinct to be your protector, your ally, your champion, without you surrendering a single part of who you are. I call this the principle of intentional appreciation. When a woman thanks a man, not just for what he did, but for the intention behind what he did, something in him changes, chemically. Literally, his brain releases the hormones associated with bonding and motivation. He doesn't just feel good. He wants to repeat that feeling. He wants to do more for her. He wants to be better for her. That's not manipulation. That's understanding how the male reward system works and choosing to work with it instead of against it. Men, for all their apparent strength and logic, are creatures that respond to emotional stimuli in ways that are almost entirely predictable. They practically come with a manual. And the good news? We have an emotional intelligence so refined, so deep, so vast, that when we choose to use it consciously, we become unstoppable. The feminine emotional world is an ocean. The masculine, comparatively, is a pond. But we don't always use our depth to our advantage. Sometimes we use it to suffer, to obsess, to interpret signals that don't exist, or to ignore the ones that do. That, my queen, is a profound waste of an extraordinary resource. Now let me tell you something few people dare say out loud. Men carry a fear they almost never confess, a fear buried so deep in their psyche that many of them don't even know it's there. It's the fear of irrelevance, the fear of no longer mattering, of being unnecessary, of being with a woman who doesn't need them for anything. And here's the most fascinating paradox in male psychology. The more independent and self-sufficient a woman appears, without ever giving him space to feel needed, the more that fear activates in him, and that fear either paralyzes him or pushes him away, not because he's weak, but because he's biologically wired to be a contributor, to add value, to have a purpose inside the relationship. Now, listen carefully, because this matters. I'm not telling you to pretend you can't do things alone. That would be a 50-year step backward, and I would never ask that of you. What I'm telling you is something far more subtle and far more powerful. There is an enormous difference between being independent and being impenetrable, between being self-sufficient and being emotionally unreachable. A woman can be completely financially independent, emotionally grounded, capable of solving whatever she sets her mind to, and at the same time, she can invite a man into her life with clear purpose, not needing him to survive, wanting him in order to flourish. Do you see the difference? I don't need you to live. I want you to live better. For a man, that is absolutely irresistible, because you're not choosing him out of desperation. You're choosing him from a place of wholeness, and men feel that difference in their bones, even if they never say so. Let me tell you about something I witnessed not long ago. A woman, mother of 3, successful professional, brilliant, came to me because her 18-year marriage was in crisis. Her husband had been pulling away slowly, fewer conversations, less affection, less intimacy. She didn't understand what had happened. From the outside, they had a perfect life. When I spoke with him separately, I found a man who felt like a paycheck with legs. He felt that his only function was financial, that she handled everything else on her own, with her friends, her work, her family, that he was surplus to requirements. When I explained this to her, her first reaction was indignation, and I understood it. She felt it was unfair. She had been doing everything right by any objective standard, and the problem was that she was too capable? No. The problem wasn't her capability. The problem was that she never invited him to be part of it. She never said, "I need your advice on this," or "I feel better when you're here," or simply, "Thank you for being present." Those small phrases, those invitations into the bond, are what keep a man's fire alive. They made one small change. She began asking his opinion on things she could clearly resolve alone, not to be guided necessarily, but to include him, to make him feel like a participant. Within 3 months, the man had come back. Not the absent, withdrawn version, the man from the early years. Present, engaged, desirous. How much did she change on the outside? Almost nothing. But what shifted internally was her understanding of what he needed to thrive inside the relationship. That, my queen, is real feminine power. Let's go deeper, because we've barely scratched the surface. I want to talk about something I call the male desire activation system, and how it differs completely from the female one. Understanding this difference is like going from driving blindfolded to having GPS, a clear map, and an open road. Female desire is contextual. A woman needs the conditions to be right before desire can emerge. She needs emotional safety, trust, intimacy. She needs not to be stressed, worried, or carrying unresolved conflict. The female desire system says, first, make me feel seen, then give me time, and maybe then my body will follow. Male desire is spontaneous. It can emerge without any emotional preamble. It doesn't require resolved conflict or a particular emotional state. That doesn't mean men don't need emotional connection. They need it far more than they ever admit. But their desire can ignite independently of that connection. What does this mean for you? It means when a man wants physical intimacy at a moment when you still feel there are unresolved things between you, he's not being insensitive. He's not dismissing your feelings. His desire system and his emotional system simply aren't as tightly linked as yours are. It's not a defect. It's a difference in design, the way any two different systems can both work perfectly and still operate differently. And here's something important. For many men, physical intimacy is their way of resolving emotional distance. It's their bridge back to closeness. Their way of reaching for reconnection when they don't have the words to initiate it any other way. I'm not asking you to always go along with that. I'm asking you to understand the mechanism so that when it happens, you don't interpret it as disrespect or indifference. Sometimes it's the exact opposite. I want to talk now about something that I believe is one of the most important things a woman can understand about men, and it has to do with attachment, the way a person connects emotionally with another. The attachment style we develop in childhood based on our early relationships, continues to operate in every adult relationship we have, especially romantic ones. Men with anxious attachment, and there are far more of them than you'd imagine, because the culture doesn't allow them to admit it, need constant reassurance that they are loved, desired, and chosen. But because that need feels shameful to them, after years of being told that emotional vulnerability equals weakness, they disguise it, they hide it, and instead of saying, "I need you to tell me you love me," they go distant. They pick fights over things that seem trivial. They become irritable or cold for no apparent reason. Does that sound familiar? A man who suddenly shuts down, who answers in monosyllables, who seems to be on another planet, he's often testing something unconsciously. He's checking, will she come to find me? Will she notice something is wrong? Will she choose me even when I'm not at my best? And here's the most common mistake. The woman, following her own attachment patterns, interprets his withdrawal as rejection. So she pulls away too, or she attacks, or she demands explanations. And that creates exactly the dynamic he feared most. The alternative isn't chasing him. It's not abandoning your own needs. It's something far more elegant. It's creating a space where he feels safe enough to be vulnerable, where he knows, because you've shown it consistently, that he can fall apart a little and it will be okay. That here, he doesn't have to perform. That here, he is enough. When a woman creates that kind of space, when she communicates through her presence, her tone, her energy, you can be exactly who you are here. Something in that man opens, not because of magic, because the nervous system finally finds safety, because the brain starts building new pathways, because perhaps for the first time, he feels completely seen. And when a man feels truly safe with a woman, he doesn't go anywhere, because that kind of safety is the rarest and most valuable thing he can find. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, even if just in your own mind. When was the last time you let the man in your life truly see you? Not the controlled version, not the one who has everything together, but the real you, the one who has fears, the one who sometimes doesn't know what to do, the one who needs support. When was the last time you were genuinely vulnerable with him. Because here's something most people don't know. Feminine vulnerability doesn't weaken a woman in front of a mature man. It makes her irresistible. When a woman says to a man, "I'm scared today. I need you here. I feel alone," and says it from a place of trust, not manipulation, that man turns toward her with everything he has. Of course, this requires him to be emotionally available. And I have to be honest with you about that. Not all men are capable of receiving that vulnerability and responding to it in a healthy way. And if you have a man beside you who minimizes what you feel, who disappears precisely when you need him most, who can't be present in your pain, that is not a problem you can fix with better communication skills. That is a matter of emotional maturity, and it requires deep work that goes far beyond anything I can cover here. But for the man who is available, for the man who is ready, your vulnerability is not a weakness. It is an invitation, and it changes everything. Now let's go somewhere that makes people uncomfortable, but that I love precisely for that reason. Let's talk about desire, but not the surface-level kind, the deeper desire, the one that lives underneath the body. Men want desperately to be wanted, not merely tolerated, not accommodated, actively, genuinely desired. They want the woman who loves them to seek them out, to look at them with a gaze that says, "It's you, only you." And one of the deepest, most corrosive fears I've observed in men inside long-term relationships is this: the quiet, creeping sense that their partner is with them out of habit, convenience, shared children, or financial stability, but not because she genuinely desires them. That doubt, once it takes root in a man, can rot a relationship from the inside, silently, without the woman ever realizing what's happening. And the painful irony? She often does desire him. She just assumes he knows. She assumes that the act of being together communicates it. It doesn't. Men do not read subtle signals. They don't decode nuance. They need you to tell them, to show them, to say it again, not once, consistently. The male reward system is powerfully activated by direct validation, a specific compliment, a sustained look, an unexpected message that simply says, "I was thinking about you and I'm glad you're mine." Those moments produce a neurological response in a man that is genuinely comparable to winning something important. And when that happens consistently, the bond that forms is one that very few crises can break. I have a concept I use often in my work. I call it the emotional bank account. Every moment of connection, appreciation, expressed desire, and shared vulnerability is a deposit. Every conflict, every cold silence, every dismissal is a withdrawal. Relationships don't end because they have conflict. They end because they have more withdrawals than deposits for too long. And the most powerful deposits are not the grand gestures. They're the small, daily ones. A touch on the arm as you pass, a genuine smile when he walks in, a thank you that goes beyond politeness, a moment of real eye contact where you're both fully present. Those micro connections are the fabric of sustainable love. Without them, a relationship becomes a business arrangement. With them, it remains a love story. Let me tell you about one more thing that I believe is one of the most destructive forces in relationships, and one that almost no one names correctly. I'm talking about silent resentment. Silent resentment is the bitterness that accumulates over time from things left unsaid, needs not expressed, disappointments swallowed because it didn't seem like the right moment, or because she didn't want to ask for too much, or because he didn't seem available to listen. And that resentment, which starts very small, becomes with time an invisible wall that both people feel, but neither knows exactly when it was built. Women are especially prone to this pattern, not out of weakness, out of the opposite. We have a capacity for adaptation and endurance that sometimes works against us. We adjust, we manage, we make it work. And meanwhile, we hold things in, and hold them in, and hold them in, Salmi. Something small and seemingly insignificant releases all of it at once. And the man standing there doesn't understand why the reaction is so large. And the woman can't explain that it's not about that one thing. It's about everything that came before. The solution is not to wait until it accumulates. It's to learn to name what you need before it hardens into resentment. I know that sounds simple. I know in practice, it is one of the most difficult things in the world. It requires knowing yourself well enough to know what you need. It requires feeling safe enough to ask for it. It requires believing, genuinely believing, that you deserve to receive it. That is inner work. Work no one can do for you. But work that is absolutely worth doing, because on the other side of it is a version of you who relates from fullness instead of deficit, who asks without demanding, who gives without emptying herself, who loves without losing herself. There's one more thing I want to say about what men truly desire, and it's this. Men want to admire their partner. Not in a pedestalizing way, in the way you admire someone who does something extraordinary, who faces difficulty with grace, who stays true to themselves under pressure, who keeps growing, who keeps becoming. When a man admires his partner, that admiration keeps desire alive in a way nothing else can. Because admiration is the component of long-term love that most resembles what we feel at the beginning, when everything about the other person seems fascinating and singular. This gives you something valuable. One of the most powerful things you can do in a long-term relationship is to keep growing. Not for him, not to impress him, for you, because you deserve a full life, a life in motion, a life that keeps expanding. But the side effect, the inevitable one, is that a man who watches you grow, who sees that you are someone who never stops discovering and being discovered, finds in you a renewed reason to choose you every day. And I believe deeply in that the most powerful love is not the love you have. It's the love you consciously choose to have, again and again, even when habit would be easier. That active choice, that love that renews itself, that is the love with the most respect in it, the love that honors both people, the love that lasts. We're approaching the end of this conversation, and I want to bring it back to you completely. Because everything we've explored today, how men function, what they need, what moves them, none of it serves you if you use it to adapt, to please, to survive inside a relationship. It only serves you if you use it as information, to communicate more clearly, to choose with more wisdom, to build from a place of genuine fullness. And that fullness begins in you, not in him, not in the relationship, in you, in knowing your body and respecting it, in knowing your emotions and not fearing them, in knowing your needs and feeling worthy enough to express them, in knowing your dreams and having the courage to pursue them without asking permission, in knowing your limits and holding them, not from fear, but from the clarity of a woman who knows what she deserves. A woman who knows herself doesn't wait for any man to come and save her. But when a man who is worth it arrives, she has enough self-love to receive him without losing herself, to love him without dissolving, to choose him without needing him to be who she already is. That woman is the most magnetic one there is, not the perfect one, not the one who never fails, the one who is authentic, the one who knows herself, the one who loves herself. That woman is you, or she can be, if you decide she is. If you decide you deserve that fullness. If you decide to stop looking outside for what can only be built within. I have a concept I want to leave you with as a final gift from this conversation. I call it the internal magnet. It's the energy that radiates from a woman when she is completely aligned with her own truth. When her thoughts, her emotions, her actions, and her words all point in the same direction, when there is no internal contradiction, when there is no public version and private version at war with each other, when what you show is who you are. That alignment creates a field of presence that is literally palpable. People feel it, men feel it, and what they feel is not just attraction, it's trust, safety, and the impulse to move closer to someone who knows exactly who she is. That magnet isn't built in a day. It's built with work, with honesty, with the courage to look at yourself without filters and decide that what you see deserves to be loved and cared for. It's built with every boundary you hold because you know you're worth it, with every difficult conversation you have, because truth matters more than momentary comfort. with every time you prioritize your well-being, not from selfishness, but from the certainty that you cannot pour from an empty vessel.